Strap yourself in because what I'm about to break down makes every so-called Hollywood scandal you've ever heard look like kids arguing over juice boxes at recess. Forget the slap heard around the world at the Oscars. Forget Kanye storming Taylor Swift's VMA stage. Forget Will and Jada's entanglements. Compared to this, those are playground spats. What I'm about to unpack might be the single most chaotic courtroom circus of the decade. Here's the scene. Katt Williams, yes, the very same comedian known for his unfiltered stand-up rants, public breakdowns, and unpredictable meltdowns, is making headlines. But this time it's not about a comedy special, not about unpaid tickets, not even about a tax problem. No, this is way darker. Williams is standing in front of a judge tied to none other than the Reggie Carroll murder case. Murder, as in blood on the asphalt, sirens, cameras flashing, a whole crime scene unfolding like something out of a late-night true crime show. So here's the million-dollar question. What happens when a professional hitman steps onto the witness stand and points a finger directly at one of comedy's most notorious, most controversial figures? What happens when previously unseen CCTV footage flickers across a courtroom projector, catching something no fan, not even his harshest critic, ever thought they'd witness? This isn't gossip. This isn't TMZ whispering. This is a legal thriller unfolding in real time, with Katt Williams dead center in the spotlight. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to front row seats for the biggest courtroom drama since the O.J. Simpson trial, except this time, it's not about whether a glove fits. It's about whether a comedian orchestrated a cold-blooded killing. And here's the irony. The man who made a living clowning on society now finds society laughing at him as he stares down a murder case. But wait, let's rewind. Who exactly was Reggie Carroll? And why is his name suddenly echoing like it belongs in the title of a Netflix true crime documentary? Carroll wasn't some faceless nobody. He was a music and entertainment promoter, a mover and shaker behind the scenes, the kind of guy who knew which artists were on the come up, who was getting cut out, and who owed who favors. In short, he was connected. And when someone like that winds up dead, the industry doesn't shrug, it buzzes, whispers snowball into rumors, and rumors erupt into headlines. And right now, those headlines are dragging Katt Williams through courtroom hell. Let's not sugarcoat it. Controversy has followed Williams like a shadow for years. If scandal was an Olympic sport, he'd have a trophy case full of gold medals by now. Remember when he allegedly punched out a store clerk over a bag of chips? Or when he was caught on video brawling with a teenager in a schoolyard, like he had wandered onto the set of WWE SmackDown? Or the time he allegedly pulled a gun during an argument gone too far? Yeah, this isn't his first collision with chaos, but this is no minor rodeo. This is the full-blown federal circus, and the ringmaster, a no-nonsense judge. And trust me, the prosecution didn't come to play. Their star witness, not a shaky bystander, not a nosy neighbor peeking through curtains. No, they brought in a full-on hitman. The kind of guy you'd expect in a gangster movie walked into a real courtroom, raised his hand under oath, and flat out said, "Katt Williams paid me to kill Reggie Carroll." Mic drop. Cue chaos. Cue gasps. Cue people at home choking on their coffee. But the show wasn't over. Just when the gallery thought they had reached the peak of drama, prosecutors dropped their so-called smoking gun surveillance footage. Grainy, black and white, time-stamped video from the night Carroll was killed. The clip allegedly shows the hitman carrying out the job, and Katt Williams himself lurking in the background, hood pulled up, seemingly overseeing the whole ordeal. Now, pause for a second. Imagine being Williams. You're in a cheap suit that someone else probably picked out. Flashbulbs exploding. Reporters scribbling every detail. Sorry, your reputation dangling by a thread. And then they roll the tape. Gasps ripple across the room. The judge slams his gavel, shouting for order, but it's useless. Once a crowd smells blood, you can't stuff the panic back in the bottle. And then came the twist. Williams stood up, puffed out his chest, and shouted, "That's not me. That's AI. That's a deep fake." Yes, you heard correctly. He claimed the footage was nothing more than computer-generated fakery. So what do you think? Desperate excuse or genius defense strategy like a remix of "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit"? Unfortunately for Williams, prosecutors weren't finished. They claimed to have much more. Suspicious bank transfers, burner phone records, and anonymous testimony all tying him to Carroll's death. According to investigators, Money was quietly wired through shadowy back channels, only to land in the hitman's account. Williams, on the other hand, painted himself as the victim, the target of a smear campaign, silenced by elites, hunted because he dared to speak uncomfortable truths about Hollywood. His words gave off strong "Illuminati's out to get me" energy. Meanwhile, the public devoured every second. Twitter exploded with hashtags, "A free Katt" or "Justice for Reggie," AI Orty. Memes poured out like water. One viral image mocked the CCTV reveal with the caption, "The CCTV determined that was a lie." Another turned him into a Scooby-Doo villain with someone ripping off his mask. Social media wasn't just reacting, it was narrating the trial in real time, practically writing a live documentary. And you can bet Netflix executives were already sketching out titles like From Comedian to Killer, the Katt Williams trial. But things kept spiraling. The hitman didn't just nod and confirm payment. He spelled it out. The meetings, the cash handoffs, the whispered instructions. He even quoted Williams allegedly saying, "Make sure it looks like an accident." Imagine being in that courtroom. The temperature drops, every eye locks onto Williams, and you can feel the chill in the air. And Williams? Sweating, smirking nervously, shaking his head in denial, occasionally laughing as if the whole trial was just another roast session. This isn't just another celebrity scandal. This is a storm, the kind that destroys reputations and rewrites legacies. Whether you love Williams or loathe him, one thing's undeniable: you can't look away. And the judge, he wasn't having it. He told the gallery flat out, no more outbursts, no more circus behavior. "The truth will come out here," he warned. But even as he spoke, cameras rolled, and the world watched with bated breath. And just when you thought the chaos couldn't get hotter, the prosecution unveiled another angle of CCTV footage. Not leaked on TikTok, not from a random bystander's phone, a verified traffic cam. This new clip allegedly showed Carroll being ambushed with a hooded figure, prosecutors said it was Williams, lingering nearby, glancing around as if waiting for the coast to clear. Silence flooded the room. Even the stenographer slowed down her typing as if her fingers couldn't believe the words. Williams' lawyers leapt to their feet, objecting so loudly it sounded like a revival service. "This is doctored. My client is being digitally framed." The courtroom shook with drama, but the prosecution coolly replied, "This footage is government certified, not a meme, not a deepfake." Outside, chaos rivaled a music festival. Protesters holding "Justice for Reggie" signs squared off against diehard fans chanting "Free Katt." Street vendors sold t-shirts of his mugshot. Influencers live streamed. TMZ swarmed like piranhas, and the internet drowned in memes. One viral tweet read, "Katt Williams facing the judge like he's testing out new material." Another captioned the judge's gavel slam. "Order in the court. This ain't a Netflix special." But prosecutors weren't done. They dragged out receipts, literal financial records, wire transfers, shell companies with goofy names like Clownfish Entertainment LLC, and suspicious payments aligning perfectly with the hitman's story. The jury leaned forward. Was this a tragedy or an unintentional comedy show with life or death stakes? Williams' defense clung desperately to the deepfake angle, even wheeling in a tech expert who testified that anyone could digitally frame his client. And sure, that's theoretically true, but prosecutors countered with evidence stacked so high it felt suffocating. Phone logs, witness testimony, anonymous sources claiming Williams and Carroll met days before the killing. And that meeting ended ugly. Cue more gasps, cue more memes, cue more popcorn sold outside the courthouse. And then came the hitman's chilling closer. He testified that Williams not only funded the hit, but gave crystal clear instructions. Make it clean, no loose ends. I can't afford headlines. The irony drips because headlines are exactly what's burying Williams right now. At that moment, the courtroom stopped feeling like a comedy routine. It felt like history. The jury stared, the gallery leaned in, and Williams tried cracking jokes, but nobody laughed. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was survival. At a certain point, it felt like the prosecution was stacking brick after brick of evidence until the walls were closing in. But here's the twist. This case was never just about facts. Because if there's one thing Katt Williams has shouted from stages for years, it's his belief in conspiracies. The Illuminati, secret societies, shadowy Hollywood elites pulling strings behind the curtain. And now, His diehard fans were throwing those very same ideas back into the spotlight. They argued he wasn't the predator, but the prey, a man targeted for daring to speak too much truth. Entire threads on Twitter claimed Reggie Carroll's death had been orchestrated as a setup, a Hollywood hit staged to frame Williams. YouTube and TikTok churned out videos faster than news outlets could keep up. Every theory wilder than the last, spreading like wildfire across the internet. Inside the courtroom, though, the judge's patience was running razor thin. At one point, he slammed his gavel so hard the echo rattled through the chamber like a drum solo. "This court will not indulge baseless conspiracy theories without evidence," he barked. But let's be honest, baseless or not, those very theories were what kept this trial trending on every single platform. And then came the money trail. Prosecutors alleged that in the days leading up to Carroll's death, large amounts of cash suddenly disappeared from Williams' accounts. Withdrawals that couldn't be chalked up to touring costs, personal shopping, or any of the usual extravagance. Layered on top of that, claims that Reggie and Katt had clashed over unpaid debts connected to a failed project. Just like that, motive stepped into the spotlight. You could practically hear the audience, the gallery, gasp in unison. A debt, a feud, a sudden killing, and a hitman's finger pointing at Williams. Whether true or manufactured, it was a narrative that clicked together like puzzle pieces in front of everyone's eyes. By the end of the session, the judge had no choice but to call for recess. But the tension didn't dissolve. It only leaked out into the streets. Cameras followed Williams as deputies escorted him out. Hood pulled low, attorneys shielding him from the barrage of reporters hurling questions. Did you order Reggie's murder? Was the footage really AI, Katt? Outside, chaos reigned. Fans sobbed. Protesters screamed. News anchors barely had voices left after hours of non-stop coverage. One exasperated anchor summed it up best. "This is no longer just a trial. This is America's newest obsession." So here's where we stood. On one side, a mountain of circumstantial evidence, testimony from a hitman, leaked receipts, and viral videos that seemed to scream guilty. On the other side, a man clinging to his innocence, insisting he was the target of a larger conspiracy, backed by an army of believers who swore he was being framed. It was comedy colliding with tragedy, truth warring against fiction, justice grappling with chaos. And whispers in the hallway suggested prosecutors weren't finished yet. They had an ace up their sleeve. Day 3 dawned, and the world held its breath. After a night of hashtags, think pieces, and viral conspiracy clips blanketing every corner of the internet, all eyes returned to the courthouse. What was this final bombshell the prosecution teased? What could possibly top CCTV clips, a hitman confession, and bank records? When court reconvened, the prosecution wheeled in a projector, old school. The jury leaned forward. The judge rolled his eyes, clearly tired of theatrics. And then the lights dimmed. This time, it wasn't grainy video, it was audio. Secretly recorded phone calls. The voice on those tapes? Allegedly Katt Williams himself, speaking in cryptic language but not cryptic enough. Lines like, "Handle that problem, no loose ends," rippled through the courtroom like aftershocks. Prosecutors insisted these were wiretaps between Williams and an associate linked to Carroll. The room froze. Jurors covered their mouths. Williams, seated at the defense table, went pale. He leaned into his attorney, whispering fiercely, but the panic in his eyes told its own story. This was bad. The defense scrambled, crying foul. They insisted the audio was doctored, edited, spliced together by enemies determined to bury him. But the prosecution wasn't finished. They unveiled the true hammer blow, cell tower data. Williams's phone had pinged in the exact area Carroll was killed, not miles away. Not in another state, but right there. In that moment, means, motive, and presence collided like a perfect storm. Social media erupted into frenzy. Tweets flew faster than a stenographer's hands. "Bro, this ain't a trial. This is a live-streamed Netflix series." Some shouted, if it was anyone else, they'd already be locked up. Others doubled down. "It's a setup. Don't trust the government." TikToks of fans in tears went viral, with captions claiming Hollywood was punishing him for exposing too many secrets. The internet was divided down the middle, courtroom chaos spilling into digital battlefields. And then, the final witness. A bombshell no one saw coming. Prosecutors called to the stand a man who used to be part of Williams' inner circle, a former entourage member who had traveled on tour, who claimed to know the comedian's patterns, moods, and secrets. His testimony landed like dynamite. He told the jury Williams often referred to Carroll as a problem that needed solving. He described heated fights, late-night meetings, whispered threats, and when asked bluntly if he believed Williams ordered Carroll's death, he looked directly at the jury and said, "Yes, 100%. The silence afterward felt heavier than steel. The defense lunged back, branding him a liar desperate for clout, an ex-employee with a grudge, and a criminal record full of debts and drug charges. Maybe so, but once those words had been spoken aloud, they couldn't be erased. By now, Williams looked like a different man. The sharp-tongued comic who once roasted enemies with ease had vanished. What sat at the table was a drained figure. Shoulders heavy, muttering lies. It's all lies, while the mountain of evidence loomed higher. The judge had finally had enough. He slammed the gavel again and ordered recess, warning both sides that the theatrics had gone too far. But the truth? This entire trial had been one long theater production. Outside, the world turned into a circus. Anchors compared it to O.J. Simpson's case, calling it the trial of a generation. Street protests surged. Merch was selling by the truckload. Streaming services circled, already drafting pitches for documentaries. And through it all sat Carroll's grieving family, silent, steady, wearing shirts with his face, carrying the pain the cameras couldn't sensationalize. As the trial edged toward its climax, the judge announced that closing arguments would be televised. The world tuned in like it was the Super Bowl. The prosecution framed Williams as a man consumed by ego, willing to silence anyone who crossed him. They rolled the footage, played the audio, flashed the cell data, ending with a gut punch line. This isn't comedy. This is cold-blooded murder. The defense countered with fireworks of their own. They called the entire case a manufactured illusion, a Hollywood script cooked up by powerful enemies desperate for a scapegoat. This isn't about guilt, they told the jury. This is about control. Don't let yourselves be manipulated by smoke and mirrors. By the time arguments ended, the tension was so thick it felt like the air itself could shatter. The jury filed out. Crowds outside chanted louder than ever. The internet braced like a storm was about to break, and that's where things stood. Katt Williams, comedian, actor, loudmouth, conspiracy prophet, staring down the fight of his life. One side screaming guilty, the other screaming setup. The gavel fell one final time for the day. Court adjourned until the verdict, and just like that, the world was left dangling off a cliffhanger. No neat punchline, no easy answer, just suspense. Because whether Williams walks free or spends the rest of his days behind bars, one truth is already written. This trial will go down as one of Hollywood's most shocking sagas, and the question still burns, heavier than ever. Is Katt Williams truly the villain of this story, or is he just another casualty in a much bigger game? The jury holds the answer, but the world won't stop guessing until the verdict drops. So, what about you? Do you believe Katt Williams is guilty, or is he being sacrificed by forces bigger than him? Drop your take in the comments. Hit like if you're glued to this story, and subscribe, because when that verdict comes, trust me, you'll want to be here.